Hello, my name is Ray White. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm coming to you from the lands of the Yagara and Turrbal people. I'm really excited to be reading the two poems that I have in Nothing to Hide. The first one is called A Trans Person Reads a Poem. A trans person reads a poem. Someone whispers, hisses hostility, then saunters off to get another drink. But my heart glows, or then skitters up on stage in response, in connection to words, to kinship with you, my heart. The second poem that I'm going to read is called Now We're All Here. Now we're all here. Let's go around and introduce ourselves. For the first time, as room's globe circles swiftly towards me, I realize I'm not alone in burying a name, in saying pronouns with pride and queer with chin raised defiance, in saying words I've feared mouthing in all spaces, on all days, except perhaps once, alone, 2 a.m. lips twitching at sleep's fringe. Now, in front of friends, in front of you, I say words that feel thriveful, sproutful, like blooming from heart space to throat space to lip speak to roomscape to world and beyond. Hello, world. I am assuredly, defiantly, transcendently here. Thank you so much.
The Magic Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Sasja Sydek. It is almost a cliche to say that life is a journey, but we are who we are based on a combination of our DNA and life events. Who is to say that combination made me? However, there are key events that I can reflect on that have shaped me to this point, knowing that my journey will continue. The clash between nature and nurture was dramatically played out in my early years with my mother. My mother taught me that a woman should always be financially independent and self-reliant. She never neglected her household duties and proved woman can have it all if she willing to fight for it. My mother made sacrifices for me that I only realized much later in life. She worked so hard to ensure that I had access to a better future. When I turned 4, my papa sadly passed away, and my mother toiled hard to make our family financially secure. And that gave me another reason to be proud of her. She stood her ground whenever life threw challenges at her, and always looked for solutions rather than lingering on problems. I was born and raised in Singapore and grew up in a Muslim household. Holding on to my faith while realizing I was different was a real struggle. People made it seem as though I couldn't be both Muslims and trans. And coming out was just too big of an obstacle for my family to digest. It was then I knew I needed to fight for my freedom. Recognizing there was no acknowledgement of support for my trans experience, I was forced to make the incredibly tough decision to leave home at the age of 16. I snuck out of my bedroom window in the middle of the night and never looked back. With nothing but $6 in my pocket, a backpack of women's clothing, and hope for a more authentic life, I ventured out into the world to find my place. I had no idea what my life would be after leaving home. All I wanted to be me and to be free. I was homeless. My circle of friends were people I went to school with, and I did not have any outside friends in the queer community until I met my mentor. Amy took me under her wings where I finally felt I could safely start my transitioning process. Amy also helped me to access legalized hormone replacement therapy and taught me everything from fashion and makeup tips to social skills. In time, I was on my way to becoming the strong and independent woman I knew I could be. With my newfound confidence, due to HRT kicking in, I started working as an erotic model for an American and Japanese websites magazines. Under the presidium of Roxy, I soon realized there was a bank to be made as a trans woman erotic model, and I continued this pathway for 8 years. This work organically transitioned into full service sex work when I learned there was a high demand with clients for me in this line of work, which this work was empowering and allowed me to enroll to tertiary studies and pay for my gender affirming surgeries. There were also hurdles during this time in my life. Transgender women in Singapore are still considered illegal. I have been thrown in jail multiple times simply from existing in public. After building both my financial independence and my life lived openly as a woman, I decided to move to Australia in early 2000. I was majoring in fashion marketing and management in Raffles LaSalle Institute of Singapore, and that brought me to Melbourne to do my internship. This was my first time being in Australia. I did not know what to expect, but I was glad to have this opportunity to leave home. I soon learned about transgender rights in Australia, and I started to recognize my value and self-worth, which I never knew I could expect. My first exposures of this country were to rampant racism that exists here. The stream of racist remarks in the process made it hard to deal with. Comment like, fucking Asian, go back to where you come from, or Miss Ching Chong made my experience and environment really toxic for me. Prior to coming to Australia, I had already working privately and had a website set up with a decent fan following, like OnlyFans. Retrospectively, I can acknowledge that working privately from the internet wasn't very common in Melbourne during the early 2000s. Sex workers were still figuring it out. While most of my experiences with clients has been respectful and professional, some sex workers within the trans community have been cruel to me at times. They made fun of my voluptuous figure and called me fat. It really messed up my mental health and led to me developing body dysphoria. I recently made effort to dissolve my body insecurities and take back my power through a participant in the 2020 fashion event, This Is Me. It was important to me because of the visibility of diverse bodies and genders. The media tells women to look a certain way, be better, slimmer, fitter, prettier, and younger. Then the patriarchy tells us to behave a certain way. Strutting the runway for This Is Me alongside 33 other women, my story was one of the resilience and courage in response to societal pressure around body image. I am more than my measurements. I won't fall into the trap of sacrificing my self-esteem for affection and acceptance. The cycle of body shaming needs to end. These days, I keep myself busy as one of the co-founders of Trans Sisters United, a not-for-profit community group designed to create projects that benefit trans and cisgender women. Also, that familiar voice on the radio for Curring the Air at 3CR, and also my own TV shows called Trans Fabulous on the Band TV Channel 31 on Friday at 10 p.m. Gender, sexual orientation, and connection to one's own race of ethnicity plays a pivotal role in all our lives. But it is especially crucial to those who have to earn the right to express it. The right to one's own identity is something still being fought for in many marginalized communities. And when something so precious is reduced to things desired solely for sexual pleasure, it can hurt in a very deep way. This is what can happen when a transgender person encounters a chaser or someone who has fetish for transgender bodies. Those who fetishize transgender bodies are participating in a culture of transphobia that deems our bodies as important solely when they are sexualized. The act of chasing is rooted in a cultural assumption that the only reason someone would want to be with a trans person is because of sexual fetish. This sexualization can also manifest as damaging assumption that trans women aren't real women. I saw sex work as a business opportunity, and I took advantage of it. Since me and other trans women are being over-sexualized every day, why not get paid for it? I continue to have a career in the connection to sex work. After such a long time in the industry, I have crafted fine-tune, which has enabled me to feel confident in my skill set and prioritize maintaining my boundaries and privacy. Although I've retired now, when asked to reflect on my time in the sex industry, I simply respond that I've lasted this long not because I've needed to rely on this work, but because I've wanted to do it. Life is beautiful when you can harness the magic art of not giving a fuck. I was so focused on the outside and how people perceived me instead of who I actually was on the inside. My personal journey, the lesson of self-love, living authentically, and being true to myself were the keys to living my truth.
Hi, my name's Robin. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm calling in from Gadigal land. I'd like to pay my respects to Gadigal elders past and present and express my solidarity with the ongoing fight for Indigenous liberation across this continent and around the world, including in Palestine. I'm going to read a poem called Trans Broken Arm Syndrome, which is published in Nothing to Hide. It's a found poem from my own medical records from about the last decade. Context that you might not get from this video is that I am super disabled. I'm so disabled, which is something that I'm lucky now at the age of 31 to have very good supports for. Knock on wood. But when I was younger, I didn't, and in the process of getting access to diagnosis and treatment and supports, this poem was born. It's certainly reflective of medical trauma, so the beautiful thing about me sending in a recording is that you can just leave the room and I will not know. So, yeah, this is Trans Broken Arm Syndrome. Oh, and in the poem on the page, when doctors misgender me, I've added strike-throughs on the incorrect pronouns. When I read it, I'm just going to click, which is a technique that I picked up from Alison Whitaker. Thank you, Alison. Trans Broken Arm Syndrome. Robin is a 22-year-old transgender who is in the process of managing this. Robin has a history of mood disturbance, reports mental clouding, gender reassignment, not planning at this stage for bilateral mastectomies, is not on androgen therapy. There is no family history. There is no family. I note the recent biochemistry. For hyperparathyroidism, there are a number of interacting factors, and sunlight exposure, weight loss. Robin was born following a full-term pregnancy, bruises easily, has had problems with joint dislocation, soft tissue injury, tachycardia, hypoxia, hyperventilation, required brief endotracheal intubation, wears glasses for short-sightedness. Head circumference was normal, has normal facial features, Neurological deterioration, weakness, and pain, always fatigued. Regular cardiac surveillance. This is to be further investigated. Mood was jovial. Suffers. Robin has identified overtly as genderqueer. This has included a formal name change to Robin, preference for use of the they pronoun, interesting developmental history, hedonic capacity and energy levels remain variable. Robin presented as of small, compact build, dressed in blue jeans, a t-shirt with words, the revolution and etc. They wore earrings and glasses and had a clear, pale complexion. Their blue-dyed hair was cut fashionably, and a floral tattoo was visible on their arm. Affect was animated and enthusiastic, with good eye contact and articulate speech. Thought form was well integrated, with a highly developed reflective capacity, earlier traumatic experiences, whilst not questioning Robin's identification as innately androgynous. I do wonder. In relation to your gender-neutral status, we are unable to change this on the system. Has a number of issues to sort out. I suspect that brain chemistry is complex. Significance of this is not clear. At a medical level, has unresolved symptoms. Blood tests reveal has ongoing investigations. I am checking. I am hoping. I am happy. Time will tell. Whole body pain and diffuse dislocations in joints. Congenital defect of the aortic valve of the heart. Abnormality of the ascending aorta. Require corrective surgery. There is also a history Robin has had to suffer. Robin's presentation is so apparently complex and so undocumented. I found it very difficult to make headway with case. I found it very difficult during our consultation. Robin presented with partner, redacted, who is also known to some of the doctors at my practice, currently, we believe, transitioning from male to female, provided a supportive presence, often whispering, occasionally inaudible. I had no further information about this. Has been labeled, I think. Says, claims, also has a diagnosis. Claims also a history. When pressed by my surprise at such a young age, said there were also gender issues. Has normal female genitalia. Describes lungs as more or less functioning. Is due to have a cardiac MRI, but the indication for this is unclear. I had nothing today to corroborate any of this history. Was really unable to give me a reasonable rationale. Is clearly suffering and distressed. Unclear to me what problems are organic, functional. This is complicated by having a large number of doctors. On examination, was very unusually but neatly dressed. Had many visible tattoos. Was softly spoken and polite, but as mentioned, conversation was full of medical jargon. Somewhat reluctantly, I am organizing an MRI and MR angiogram. Clinical notes, not provided. Deficiency noted. Persistently unexplained in excess, exceeded normal. Elevation suggests possible sarcoidosis, aplastic, mild opacification, tests pending. Recurrent infections, blood transfusion reactions, other immunodeficiencies may be associated, suggest testing. Recommend measurement for screening at-risk individuals, subject to the following conditions. The patient tolerated the procedure well. The primary site of pain is really the whole body. Robin was extremely cooperative. This must be extremely tiring for... Quality of life is now markedly reduced. Has accepted the fact that lifespan may be markedly reduced. This diagnosis has a severe negative impact on functional capacity, includes, but is not limited to, ligaments, tendons, intestines, brain and cognitive function, heart, blood vessels, and other internal organs. Recurring joint injuries can only be managed with no cure. The best Robin can hope for is to manage. Prevent deterioration of musculoskeletal system, loss of independence. To meet the specific stability requirements of the upper cervical spine. It is the gold standard to keep the body as strong as possible. Robin has been given a significant permanent diagnosis, The implications are many and complex. It is always a joy to see Robin. Robin often pushes through to the point of exhaustion. They have been excellent with communication around their disability to pursue a happy and fulfilling life. We still face consistent challenges, structural instabilities, systemic dysfunction. Values should be interpreted with caution. I felt a bit complicated about putting this poem out into the world. I was worried about how people would receive it on a political level when trans people's experiences are already so medicalized and so stigmatized. But I've had a lot of trans people get in touch to say that they found it, cathartic or validating because they saw their own experiences reflected in it, and and they thought it was just them, and they were the only ones being treated that way. And unfortunately, it is structural. But I've also had a lot of cisgender doctors and people working in the medical sphere get in touch to say that they found it really interesting and confronting, and that it made them rethink the way that they were treating their trans patients and talking about their trans patients, which is exactly what I had hoped this poem would do. Trans people aren't just one community. We're a very broad group of people with very different experiences of oppression and also of joy. And one of the fantastic things I think about an anthology like this is that we get a little bit of a window into some of the range of those experiences. And I think, books like this are hopefully an entry point into solidarity and resistance. My favorite piece from this book is called Imagining Abolitionist Futures, which is a conversation between Nayuka Gori-Whitgorry and Rosalina Curtis. And I love it because they do such a good job of articulating how all of these different axes of oppression are bound up together, and how our liberation is also bound up together. And yeah, just it's a really good piece. You should read it. And I think we have a lot to learn from the resistance movements that have come before us, and we have a lot to do, but we are not alone. And I think that can feel overwhelming, but it's also a source of strength. So that's all. Join your union.
Hi, my name is Jace Ray, and behind the camera I have my wonderful partner and co-creator Theo Brown, and I'm here on Ghana Country, coming to you pre-recorded. Today I'm here to talk to you about our wonderful book, Oh How We Laughed, which is an anthology of queer and disabled South Australians. I'm going to start by reading our acknowledgement of country. This book has been edited and published on the stolen lands of the Kaurna people. Submissions for this book have been written on the lands of the Kaurna, Ngarrindjeri, Narungga and Boandik people, and we extend our respect and adoration for the ancestors, elders and powerful communities of these lands. I stand on the shoulders of giants, the Gamilaroi people, and am grateful for the opportunity to work beside my communities to bring this work and to hold a mirror to this oppressive system. We cannot have disability justice or queer liberation without first calling for black sovereignty and land back. Under the colonial regime of so-called Australia, stories and culture have been attacked and destroyed by settlers, and we wish to platform these stories and take back this control. Let me tell you a little bit more about our book by also reading the About section. This book brings together artwork, poetry and prose from queer, disabled South Australians for the anthology Oh How We Laughed, with a little asterisk on the end. Creativity and laughter are universal. They aren't a constant, but they are a strong point of connection. We experience fear, joy, loss, exhilarating highs, depressive lows, and so much more. How we express those emotions might be different, or not at all, yet amongst all this, we can always strive for a laugh. The creative works featured in this anthology draw from a wide range of experiences and expressions. They share thoughts through fiction and pure creative forms. They delve into sharp realizations and convey these in direct non-fiction texts. There are pieces that feel like mere glimpse into single moments of the creators' lives. They all collate into this anthology, which is designed as an exhibition in printed form. The works are presented for readers to browse at their leisure, focus as intently as desired, or be guided from start to finish as curated to balance the peaks in emotions and pace of individual styles. Oh How We Laughed is the second book in the Blue Feet anthology series and is edited by Alex Duncan. The first book in the series, Green, is an anthology by South Australian emerging creative researchers. I'd like to take a special moment to thank all of our contributors: Theo Brown, Freddie Fung, KJ Hepworth, Rainier Hotchkiss, Sally Ann Hunter, Jam, Fig Kershaw, Victoria Knight, Tabitha Lean, Leon McAloney, Tushar Patel, Takari Rigney, Denver Ruck, and Cameron Rutherford. And to close us off, I'm going to read my poem featured in this book. I should have had the page memorized, but I forgot. It's got a beautiful contents, make everything really easy for you. This is my poem, Black, Broke, Trans, and Crazy. I knew I was black from when I was young. My mum knew very little of her people, so I sat down in front of the TV and watched their animated Dreamtimes. All my best friends at school were black. It was just easier to exist with them than with anyone else. We just got each other in ways that no one else could. My great-grandfather died a year to the day before I was born. My mum swore he visited her in a dream and said he would pass his spirit on to me. Now that's pretty black. I knew we were very broke pretty young too. When I was born, my dad worked long hours driving trucks, and all my clothes were second-hand, unless wealthier family members bought gifts. We lived in a broke part of town, housing commissions, and recently released homes. I remember my auntie invited us for her 40th birthday dinner, and me, Dad, and my baby sister shared one meal from Hog's Breath Cafe. Now that's pretty broke. It took me a little longer to realize I was crazy. I first tried to kill myself when I was 6. I thought if I could pull bookshelves down on me, maybe I would die. It sounds crazy now, but I just knew I needed to die. I got hospitalized for the first time at 14 and spent most of my school holidays from that point on in children's psych hospitals. Now that's pretty crazy. I wish I'd known I was trans sooner. Everyone is impressed that I came out so young, right before I turned 16, but it didn't feel like the right time. It felt astronomically too late. I made so many choices up to that point to hide that I was trans, that I wasn't even sure I knew how to be who I really was. But I carved my new life with my new name and said fuck you to anyone that questioned me. Now that's pretty trans. My life has been surrounded by being black, broke, crazy, and trans. But the more I think about it, the more I am proud that it makes me, me. You can get your own copy of Oh How We Laughed online at Bonka TV's press store, or Hares and Hyenas, your local queer bookshop, also stocks it at the Pride Centre. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name's Liz, and I'm one of the authors in this beautiful collection, Nothing to Hide. I want to thank you so much for being here today and for this amazing, like really, really exciting festival. And I want to talk a little bit about the piece in this book and about being a trans writer and, you know, being a trans writer in the world. And I've got 5 minutes, so I'm going to speak really quickly. I've been reflecting on like the context for my piece in this book, which is called Watching Things Grow. And it was written in 2021, and it was like a very deeply coded piece in the same way that kind of everything I've written since then is deeply a coded piece. But kind of it was in that moment of like talking about going for like walks around the neighborhood, and like it doesn't explicitly mention in the final version like lockdown experiences, but like that was kind of like a big part of the vibe that was happening. And as many of us were, we were kind of like finding little hobbies and obsessions to keep us going through the day. And mine was like, I started building some little garden beds and growing some vegetables and some herbs and things in my little rental garden, and getting like obsessed with these plants. Like, I was like going out multiple times every day and like checking they were okay and like keeping like detailed notes about like how the little plants are going and getting very emotionally attached to them, but also like learning how to look after them and how each of these different like species kind of wanted to be and wanted to grow, and how much care and attention they wanted and what that care and attention looked like. Did they want water in specific ways, or did they need food, or did they need trimming, or did they need like, you know, protection, or these kinds of things. And so it became this really kind of like detailed way of like diving into like care for something, and thinking about like what a plant needed and how I could give it that and how I could make it like grow and be beautiful. And to no surprise, the title Watching Things Grow has more than one meaning, and it's also about being trans, and about watching ourselves and about growing as people, both emotionally and through age, but also through like the constant never-ending puberties of trans adulthood. And I think there was like a moment early on when I was like, or probably less early on, you know, it's a bit embarrassing to admit, probably not as early as it should have been, while I was like paying all of this attention to these like beautiful plants and like considering their needs and thinking about how like they wanted to be loved, when I kind of like something like the light bulb went off and I was like, maybe I am also a plant. Maybe I also deserve care and consideration and love and attention, and actually figuring out what my needs are. And that kind of started this like unraveling of like, what does it mean to be a plant? If I am the plant, what is the care I need? What is the love I need? How do I note that? How am I out there like checking every day the moisture levels in the soil? Are any of the leaves getting brown? Like, how do I do that for myself? How do I watch myself grow, but also enable myself the most beautiful growth possible? And it was perhaps a slightly confronting feeling, to kind of like arrive to this place of like, how do I actually exist in a space of like self-love and self-care that is like genuine and meaningful in like the middle of 2021, but also kind of like what does the body and the heart and the mind want? Like I probably as a body am not really like vibing with like the cottage garden setting, you know, as much as I love a bit of like, you know, femcore or whatever have you. There's actually probably a rewilding that is like desired from like a gendered sense. Maybe there is something like expansive and beautiful, but also just like allowing the body what it wants, in the same way that like maybe my body is like, you know, the beautiful forested like Gadigal plains of like allowing for burn back and allowing for like, you know, deeply knowledge like care through like ownership and things like traditional ownership and things like that, but that allows the flourishing of like flora and fauna, kind of in like this metaphor, this like pre-colonization sense. And so what does that mean for me? What do I want and what do I need? And that all those ideas kind of filtered down into this piece about like, how do we love ourselves? How do we love our gardens? How do we grow plants well, and how do we grow well as individuals and as trans people? And I really hope you read it. I really hope you enjoy it. And I also really want to implore you to both think about what you need to grow as the beautiful plant that you are, or whatever metaphor works for you, but also to write those things down and to become a trans writer yourself, or a cis writer if you're here. No shade, you know, all God's children. But for the trans and gender diverse folk here today, like, I think there is such power in our words and our stories, and I think that's going to come through this festival. There's going to be so much beauty and joy and pain and shared experience, and I really implore you to be a part of that and to join that canon, even if it's just for yourself, just for your friends and family. You can be a trans writer today. I believe in you. And yeah, thank you so much for having me here, and have just the most beautiful festival. Mwah.